This is the Year 11 Computer Science PEP, Part 1. In your exam, you may be asked about variable length. Variable length is how many characters there are within the string in this example here. Apple has 6. If we take contents, contents is made of 2 words with a space in between. Hello having 5, world having 5, and the space being 1 also, so therefore the total is 11. Concatenating 2 strings is adding 2 variables together in a non-mathematical way. So here, if we were to concatenate content and title, we'd get hello, world, leaders. Notice between world and leaders there is no space, because in the original variables there was no space at the end of contents or the start of title. A substring is part of an existing string. For example, a substring of contents would be LO. You need to know the different data types, including integer, which is a whole number, such as 17, a real or float, which is the same thing. An example of this would be 17.65. A character, which is basically a single letter, number or symbol on its own. For example, the $sign on its own, the letter A on its own, or the number 1 on its own. Strings are made up of a combination of any characters. A boolean is a true or false statement. This is sometimes compared to the 1 or 0, basically binary. You need to know the different high and low level languages. A high level language, an example of this would be Python. Another one is assembly language. This is basic shortcuts for the CPU. An example of that would be add. It's a shortcut to add something together. This is better than writing it out in zeros and ones. Zeros and ones would be machine code. This is the lowest level you can get to before the hardware. You need to know that machine code is classed as low level, assembly language is classed as low level, and something like Python is classed as high-level language. The 3 translators you need to know are assembler, interpreter and compiler. An assembler takes assembly language and converts it into machine code. An interpreter takes a high-level language and converts it line by line into machine code. A compiler takes the whole high-level program and converts it in one into machine code. A selection is an if statement. In your exam, you might get a question like, where does the selection start? In this example here, you would say line 2. For your exam, you need to know what iteration is. There are numerous types of iteration. This one is a counter-controlled loop. This is because we know how many times it's going to loop round and repeat the same piece of code. This is because we know there are 3 fruits: apple, banana and cherry. In your exam, if you're asked to identify where this loop started, you would say on line 2. This one is also iteration, but this one is a condition-controlled loop. It will continually loop round until a condition is no longer met. In this example here, it will loop round until I is not equal to finished, and this is the condition. You might be asked on where the iteration starts in this example. To get this right in this example, you would say line 3. You need to be familiar with nesting. In this example here, I have an if statement that has been nested inside of another if statement. It's also possible to nest selections inside of iterations, iterations inside of selections, iteration inside of iteration, or in this example, selection inside of selection. Following on from that, here's an example of a loop nested inside of a loop. You need to be familiar with the mathematical operators, including mod and div. Mod gives us the remainder from a division calculation. For example, 7 mod 3, 3 goes into 7 twice, leaving a remainder of 1. 3 mod 4, well 4 doesn't go into 3, so we get a remainder of 3. 6 mod 4, well 4 goes into 6 once, which leaves us a remainder of 2. Div is division with no remainder. For example, 7 div 3, well 3 goes into 7 twice, so the answer is 2, and we're not interested in the remainder. 3 div 4, well 4 doesn't go into 3 at all, so that's a 0, and we're not interested in the remainder. 6 div 4, well 4 goes into 6 once, so the answer is 1, and again, we're not interested in the remainder, there's no fractional part. You need to know the different logic gates. An AND gate requires both conditions going into the gate to be true. An OR gate requires one, or the other, or both conditions to be true. A NOT gate simply takes the input and reverses the result. Here's a basic example of a 1D array using iteration. On line 2 I've got 4x in the range of 0 to the length of cars. x is the placeholder, so it starts at 0 and it will increment through the loop until it reaches 3. So the first iteration of the loop, x would be 0, so therefore on line 3 it would print cars x, so therefore it would go to the index of the array at 0, which is Ford, and therefore it would print out Ford. So x is now incremented, so it's now 1. So this time on line 3 it would go to the index of 1, which has got Volvo at it, so it would print out Volvo. So now x, the placeholder, has incremented to 2. So therefore on line 3 it would print out BMW, because this is what's at index 2. So now the loop has completed because it's gone from the range of 0 to 3, so it's gone from 1 to 2, it's got to 3, therefore it has stopped. Thank you for watching. Remember to watch part 2.